the three of us kind of within Olympus put together Sporos with the help of many people, some of which are still with us here as mentors. So that's me in a nutshell. And let's see. I don't know if we want to actually, before I pass it over, what I tried to do over the weekend, I did a little bit of housekeeping inside of our Discord, and I created an introduce yourself channel. I thought it would be useful if at y'all's leisure, if you would just go in and put, a few sentences about your background, kind of who you are. I think that would be a good repository for people to come back to it and refer to it, just so they know, who's who inside the server. Evelyn, sorry, because I missed the first couple minutes, did you want to do a round robin of everybody introducing themselves, or did you want to just go straight to the Tsunami team?
Maybe just one person from the mentors plus one person from the other teams to do a quick hello and then go to the Tsunami team.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, let's do I'll be the usher here on asking other mentors to do a quick introductions, and then I'll kick it over to the startup. So, Big Babs, why don't you go next? Big Babble.
Yeah. Sorry, I got rugged off connection. What was the question?
Would you mind just doing give you a quick background on yourself?
Yeah, been in crypto on and off since 2017. Where's Kotos, the Titan? Briars, here he is. Lost money on ICOs, came back on 2020, since then all in. Mid-space, 20 years experience, like from a physical worker to door-to-door salesman, and climbing up all the steps to being a general manager of a very well worldwide corporation, managing multiple territories for them. I left because I hated the corpo shit it grew to become. And during my corpo times and afterwards, I was advising multiple startups on strategy, people management, organization, sales, etc. I'm high on people, despite being introvert, eternal utopist, and contributing to Olympus since October 2021. First partnerships, then incubator, and from there met Evelyn and Lipon and ended up here.
Thanks, Babs. Brandon, will you go next, please?
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm Brandon, Iceman on Discord. Similar to Big Babs, I got into crypto in 2017, primarily as an investor, and I have about 15 years experience, mostly like in management consulting, but doing like very large scale transformations for some like really large clients. I've managed teams, global teams of up to 550 people. I've been an entrepreneur sort of throughout my life. Have an MBA in like entrepreneurship. I've launched many businesses, and similar to Lipman, I have many battle scars and war stories, etc. I'm an adjunct professor. I teach intro to entrepreneurship classes and also graduate level consulting classes. And lastly, I'm helping Wardle from Olympus, who you all may know, build out Artemis Academy, which is a Web3 educational platform.
Thanks, Brandon. Briarius, aka Goddess.
I'm gonna fix that soon. So I'm Briarius. I've been in the crypto space since about 2013-ish. Started getting more involved on the dev side in 2017. Of course, like everyone, I both won and lost during the ICO craze. I'm primarily a software engineer, so I've worked kind of from starting my own companies to early stage startups to kind of mid startups all the way through IPOs, taking various companies from kind of mid 100 millions to a 100 billion or a couple billion. Kind of always on the technical side though, never really the business end. So let's see what else. Really interested in Web3. I actually I really see this as kind of like the greatest opportunity at the moment to really make impact and do something that's going to be kind of amazing. But I think that's all I got.
Awesome, thank you. Edge Caser.
Hi, good day. Yeah, I'm Edge Caser. I'll keep it very brief. I've been a product manager for something like 12, 15 years. Most of this time has been spent on very early startups across, games, crypto, and prop tech. I tried starting one company right before the pandemic hit, and that was not the best decision ever. Also I've spent some time consulting in data analytics, and which coincidentally is what I've been doing for Olympus since June of last year. I now lead the working group for data and metrics. I think that's like I said, I'd keep it brief.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. Felix.
Hello, everyone. I think I'll keep it relatively brief as well. I've been in crypto since probably about 2015-16. I've become more active over the years and currently contributing to a few DAOs, one of which, of course, is Olympus, as most people here. Mostly working on partnerships and integrations. For Meat Space, my background has mostly been in business. I've done a bit of business development, a bit of operations management, a bit of project management, both in very large companies, and joined a few early startups as well, doing similar type roles. So, I think I'll leave it at that, just to speed things up.
Thanks, Felix. All right, Oracle. Oracle, you there?
Yeah, apologies. My connection is bad. Hey everyone, I go by the name Oracle. I've been doing graphic design professionally for 7 years or so, 6 and 7 years. I do A/B testing, product review, design review, and I do branding, marketing, and then also graphic design. I'm also working within Olympus, aside from Sporos, on both design and marketing.
Thank you. Okay, and there are a couple people that are not on this call, and inside the Discord, there's a channel called Resources. I have pasted a Google Doc link for bios on those folks as well. So, and there's actually a couple people that probably need to be added to that document. But anyway, also a good time, I guess, for me to mention it. What I'm going to try to do as we go along here is use that channel to just have pertinent information and quick links kind of stuff. So, hopefully if there's stuff that you feel like you're having to go and dig for and find on a regular basis, if you would ping me and let me know what those are, I'll make sure to put those links in this channel so we can create easy access for people. Okay, with that, I tell you what, Kesh, or let's start with you, Kesh. If you would take us through you and the team and Hash, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. Hey guys, hope everyone's had a good day so far. My name is Kesh, and I'm working with Mohammed. We're working on Hash. Hash is basically trying to solve the problem within Discord being noisy, messy, and disorganized. It's very hard to keep track of everything, and people receive notifications by the buttload. And so we're really trying to solve this problem by making a web app that's built on top of Discord. Users will be able to log on to the web app, and then they'll be able to view sort of all the pertinent information for them on Discord. So they'll be able to have a completely revamped notification center. There they'll be able to see all of their notifications in one central inbox. They'll be able to categorize notifications and organize them. It's very similar to like a superhuman experience, if you're familiar with that company. We're also developing a dashboard where users will be able to see sort of their lives on Discord. So they'll be able to see upcoming events, they'll be able to see ongoing calls, and they'll be able to see sort of their reminders. Reminders is a unique feature to us in that we're sort of allowing for users to be able to be reminded of future events. So an example would be if there's an NFT drop, you would be able to remind yourself of that NFT drop within 2 weeks. That's sort of the central idea of what we're doing. And we're currently sort of user testing right now and developing our MVP.
Thanks, Cash. Can't wait to be your first user. I've got so many use cases that I want to use Hash for. How about the Cello team?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jose. I'm part of Cello. We are building tools for DAOs to allow DAOs to use their treasury for attracting, retaining, and supporting their communities. No, we already built the first 2 products, which are uncollateralized loans and collateralized loans. We are currently working on the front end interface, so the back end is ready, and the next step for us is to try to have some initial users to have feedback. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Jose. All right, Kirill, please.
Hi, Lipman. I guess I'm gonna be the team's voice today. My name is Alex, and I'm the head of PR and marketing at Zenai Protocol. So nice to meet you guys. We're like a growing team here, 10+ people. Currently, there's a few beautiful girls on the call. I guess some of them you've seen already. I've been in touch with Lipman before, and right now I'm gonna make a brief, short intro. So you're gonna get familiar with the product we're building here. Tsunami is the first, or we coined it like the ultimate decentralized yield aggregator for stablecoins. So we're basically bridging the gap between traditional finance and decentralized finance. Of course, there's been a lot of protocols marketing as something unique. Well, we're not something unique. We are the solution for various problems in the DeFi field. We're basically trying to spearhead the user journey and make it accessible for average Joe, not only just for crypto whales. So we created a very smooth and reliable and easy to use solution for stablecoin deposits. Well, I'm the PR and marketing manager. By my previous job, I took part in nearly 10 crypto projects before switching to DeFi last year. So I joined Tsunami 2021, and I was happy with this team ever since. I think they're happy with me. I help with content, PR, and various publications because we've been featured in a lot of media. It's going to a graph, and so on and so forth. Next, we're building a robust and diverse community or various social networks. And our Zoo Shark is a very catchy character, so we even came up with Instagram for Zoo and enjoys a lot of likes there. So looking forward to getting in contact with you guys to build some mutual beneficial partnership. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, well, I think we've run through it all and are ready to jump in. So Brandon, do you want to take us away here?
Awesome, let's do it. Let me see if I can share my screen really quickly.
Okay, while Brandon is figuring that out, just a reminder, so this week, because we did intros again, we had a new team, it didn't, I guess, make sense to try the 60-second pitch, but just think about that. Let's try that next Monday. We did it last Monday. Let's try it again next Monday. To compress your project's pitch in 60 seconds, see what the reaction is from the folks, and then see if you got to a point where you can comfortably get anybody to be interested in learning more about your project. All right. Thanks, Brandon. It's all yours.
Sure. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep,
Yes.
I can.
Awesome. All right. Well, all right. So thanks again, everyone, for joining today's session. As I mentioned in my intro, I teach some entrepreneurship classes, and one of the classes that I teach is entrepreneurial mindset. And it's a whole semester long class, so it's like 3.5, 4 months. We go pretty deep, into the mindset of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I think like even these discussions are relevant for people that have been serial entrepreneurs. It's always important in my perspective to do continual sort of introspective and self-reflection, on who you are, and always try to make yourself better. Because I think, especially the life of an entrepreneur can be really volatile, right? It can be really stressful. And there's a lot of elements that I think you're subject to as an entrepreneur that you may not be, you may not face in the corporate. You may not face in the corporate world because there's hierarchies and there's other buffers. So, with that said, this whole discussion today is centered on like what's it like to be an entrepreneur, and how you can strengthen your skill set, sort of like the soft skills of being an entrepreneur. And one thing, I think Big Babs and I presented, I forget if it was last week or the week before. COVID has completely messed up my sense of time. Could have been yesterday. I don't even remember. But I like to make these conversations interactive. So if you guys have questions or points that you want to chime in with, please feel free, because I feel like that's, the best way to keep people engaged, etc. All right. So with that said, let's get into it. So some of the characteristics of what it means to have an entrepreneurial mindset. So, this is not completely exhaustive, but, as an entrepreneur, being decisive, is key, right? I think what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, because you're faced with a lot of ambiguity or uncertainty, some people find it really difficult to be decisive. So one of my favorite quotes is what you see here on the right, which is really funny, but, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So as an entrepreneur, it's key that you make decisions and that you're okay with the decisions that you've made, and you decide to move on from that point. I think a lot of times, as entrepreneurs, self-doubt sort of creeps in. And if you're a person that constantly second guesses your choices, it's hard to make any specific progress, with your venture. I had a meeting earlier today. I won't name names, but I think at the early inception of startups, it's really hard to make decisions because you have such a broad and grand view of what you want to build, right? And you're working back from this end state product to make decisions today, and I think a lot of times that's very difficult, right? So. From my own experience, I'll share one story. When I was early in my entrepreneurial life, I was working with a team, and it sounds really ridiculous, but this was actually a big problem at the time. Was we were building out our website. We were like putting together like marketing materials. We're ready to like go, come out of stealth mode and introduce our product to the world, and we got hung up on font. And it was like the style of the font, is something that seems so absolutely ridiculous to me in hindsight. We just couldn't agree on it as a team. And it delayed our launch by a week, which is completely, ridiculous. But, it was really an issue. And we'll talk about later on in this presentation, like co-founder conflict and how we all sort of interact with one another, and also like decision-making tools that you can have at your disposal. But, being indecisive as an entrepreneur is akin to death, right? Like it's a fast-paced environment. You got to be decisive and move on. So don't want to belabor the point there. The second point here, that's important as an entrepreneur is being confident, right? Confident not only with your decisions, but confident in communication, right? You have to sell people on your vision. And a lot of times, the best way to do this is And again, this is not prescriptive. This varies from team to team. But if you're passionate about what you're selling, or if you've experienced personally the problem that you're trying to solve, that comes across, right? Like it comes across in the way that you communicate, and also that there's a level of confidence that's built in because you've experienced these problems and maybe you've overcome those problems. So now you're speaking from a point of confidence. And I think, again, that's really attractive. It's sort of magnetic in the way that you'll draw people in. So confidence is key in communication. It's key in your decision making. But overall, confidence is paramount, right? Third element here, accountability. This is something that I think a lot of early stage startups struggle with, right? Because perhaps you have a lot of people that are helping out before, Sweat token was developed. There's maybe you have a lot of people helping out on your programs or your startups, and accountability is tough because maybe everyone's part-time, right? They have a full-time job and they're contributing whatever hours they can, but there's no real accountability sometimes because people aren't drawing salaries and there's no real firm commitment. So being able to keep yourself and your teammates accountable will serve you well as an entrepreneur. I'll just go through these last two and then perhaps we sort of chat on this as a group. But so moving on to number 4 is resilience. And I kind of alluded to this when we were talking about decisiveness, but it's very easy to plummet into self-doubt as an entrepreneur, right? You make a decision, you go to sleep that night, and you're, before you're able to fall asleep, you're wondering like, shit, did I make the right decision? And you tend to second guess yourself, right? Especially in a world as an entrepreneur where everything's uncertain, right? Maybe you're implementing I think everyone here is like trying to implement a new product into the world. So there's a lot of uncertainty around that, right? So as an entrepreneur, you have to be resilient, right? There's going to be ups and downs. You have to stay the course, hopefully if you've made the right decisions, you stay the course, you stay firm to your culture, your commitments, etc. But resilience is really key. And then the last one is humility, where you don't want to come across as arrogant. I think that's a theme that, your co-founders, the people that are working for you or with you, can easily pick up on. Investors, just anyone generally, helping out, can sense arrogance. And I think a lot of times arrogance can lead to bad decisions. And I'll share a very quick story that many of you may or may not know, but I like to share this story. It's about Magellan. So Magellan, a lot of people, if you study history, was one of the people that was credited for circumnavigating the globe. So he left Europe and he set on this course to go all the way around the world by ship. And interestingly, he never made it all the way, but people tend to believe that he did. Magellan is like a famous name. Companies have named themselves Magellan and all this. But what's really interesting is, I don't know if it's interesting, but it's true, is that Magellan, believing that he had the highest level of innovation at the time, and we all think we're innovative here, but he had a suit of armor, and he found himself in around like the Indonesia area, and he was trying to buy spice from one island, and this island's leader said to him, well, we'll sell you all our spice if you can help us out, because this other island is full of cannibals and they keep killing and eating our people. So Magellan, thinking again that he has like the highest level of innovation, puts on his suit of armor and gets a couple of his buddies, maybe like 10 people, 15 people, and in his arrogance, he went to the shore of this cannibal island in his suit of armor and found out that there were, I think, over 5,000 cannibals there against his 10, him and his 10 buddies. And Magellan was killed, and I use this example to show that, because you're innovative, because you're coming up with these ideas, doesn't mean that you have the right to be arrogant, or doesn't have, I think a lot of times that blinds entrepreneurs in thinking that, you're invincible and that you can achieve these great things. I think humility is the power, and not being arrogant. So I'll take a pause here and see if anyone wants to chime in, or if you've had experiences with any of these, or if you felt that you're lacking any of these. I'd love to take a minute to chat on it.
All of these, so on point. So on point. I've made all these mistakes that you just went through.
Thanks for sharing, Ewan.
Yeah, I think maybe another way to describe some of this is like imposter syndrome, right? It's like, in some scenarios you've been there, done that, but in most you haven't. So in those that you haven't, it's, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I a good enough, organizer and leader? But really, success begets confidence, and it's like this virtuous cycle, right? And so you can't be successful until you get started. Back to that.
That's right.
That quote. So you just keep chipping away at it, and you'll stumble, but you'll also be successful, and you lean into the success and take advantage of the confidence that creates.
100%. Yeah, well said.
I love that Magellan story. I've heard that from he died in the Philippines in Lapu-Lapu, and there's it's funny, if you travel there, a lot of the Filipinos know that story because there's a fish named they basically named a fish after him in that island. It's Lapu-Lapu, but I think that's a really great I think that's a really great story about like this weird balance between confidence and humility, right? Like I always think about that, where I'm like, I want to be confident, but I'm like, am I being arrogant, or am I being confident, right? Like, am I striking this right balance between like listening, or deciding like, no, we need to charge ahead. Like I know this is the right choice, and that's so nuanced sometimes, and can come off as, you don't. The last thing you want to be is arrogant, but you also, the last thing you want to do is like have inaction.
Yeah. I mean, these are all really, difficult things to balance and achieve, each one of them simultaneously. And, maybe it's, one day you're really confident, and the next day you're a little more humble. And, I think that's okay too, as we all progress. But I think that self-reflection, that you just described, is probably the most important thing, which is like thinking about that. Like, am I coming across as arrogant? Or am I coming across as confidence? Because I think by questioning yourself, that's where, you'll start to see the biggest gains, and also keep yourself honest, keep yourself in check.
Maybe just as a quick note, there's a really great book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. And I think it really delves into point number 5 on the slide. And it's just full of examples of, either entrepreneurs or famous politicians or whatever, but people who really went, and their ego got too big, and they had issues, and they fell down, etc., etc. So if you're willing to, if you want to learn more about that, I can really highly recommend that book.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. One of the other references that I typically talk about too, and this is like a very abbreviated, sort of session compared to, the semester or whatever that I teach, but The Prince by Machiavelli, I personally found to really be helpful for 2 reasons. One, for those of you that don't know, Machiavelli wrote this manual to someone who is about to become a prince, and it's sort of like a playbook on how you should act as a leader, and how you should govern people. But within that, I think there's a lot of life lessons and skills. But just two quick points. One is, if if you're the smartest person in the room, and I'm not paraphrasing, like this is not quoting the prince, this is like in my own words, but if you're continually the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room, right? Like you want to surround yourself with mentors and teammates and whoever, people that are much smarter than you. And part of that is allowing number 5 to sort of manifest, right? Like being humble. Because if you're arrogant, I think that arrogance, you won't surround yourself with people that can make you better because you already think you're the best. So, I think, looking at the people that you're with, and you always want to be surrounded by people that are smarter than you, and you want to be the one that sort of brings them together, right? And encourages them all to be smart, and create the best version of your product. The other one is related to number 4 from the Prince, which is like, being an entrepreneur, you're going to face all sorts of obstacles, right? Like we have higher highs and lower lows than probably anyone else on the world. And, there's a section of the Prince where he talks about facing obstacles in your life. And I think changing perspective on what an obstacle is, we all face issues, whether they're personal or professional or whatever. But basically what he tells this Prince is like, you should view having obstacles in your path as a fortunate thing to happen to you. Because when you're faced with an obstacle, you can climb up on top of that obstacle. You can defeat it. You can overcome it. And now that you've overcome that obstacle, now you're on a higher step, right? You're standing on top of that obstacle. So it's almost like, if you think of these as steps, like the obstacle comes and you overcome it, you stepped up. Another obstacle comes, you overcome it, you stepped up. It's like life's way of testing you, where I think a lot of people view obstacles in a negative sense. Oh, this didn't work out, or, I had a bad meeting with an investor or whatever, or, my 60-second pitch is not coming along. You got to view these as challenges to overcome that make you stronger. So anyway, don't want to belabor the point here, but, these are some of the characteristics of being an entrepreneur. And to segue into the next slide, some of the biggest killers of an entrepreneurial mindset are doubt, fear, and not starting. So I figured we talk a little bit about fear and uncertainty. So, as an entrepreneur, and I kind of alluded to this, there's different types of fear that we experience. And a big fear is fear of the unknown, right? We're launching products in uncertain spaces. And it's hard to make decisions, with a lot of ambiguity. So, this kind of goes back again to surrounding yourself in rooms or with people that are smarter than you, that can help you make decisions in ambiguous situations. I think as an entrepreneur, you want to be someone that is always open to feedback, right? Whether you think you know the course, which is great, it's always good to ask someone else, if what their thoughts are. Specifically, when I say someone else, your customers, right? So you can kind of cut through fear of the messy unknown by gathering data, doing research. But at the end of the day, it's, talking to people, right? Going out, figuring out who your customers are, and seeing if your product resonates with them. The second one here is fear of being judged. I think, just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily make you a great public speaker, right? It's something you have to work on. And if you ask people why they don't like public speaking, why it's difficult or challenging for them, a lot of times it's because they're afraid of being judged. They don't know what the people that they're speaking to are thinking of them. And that leads to self-doubt, that leads to self-confidence issues. And then that all comes through for you as a presenter, right? So fear of being judged can be a big obstacle, for people when it comes to public speaking. And then the last two here, fear of the first step. You got to make a decision. You got to put a stake in the ground. You got to be comfortable with it. And then you got to build on top of it, right? So there's pressure on that first step, but you'll find that if once you take that first step, as someone mentioned before, success begets success, And in order to be successful, you got to take that first step. So, it sounds like many of us have done that here, but you want to continue to do that, right? There's always a first step of launching a product. There's always a first step of launching version 2 of that product, and first step of meeting with investors. So there'll be many first steps on your journey, and I think hopefully you build confidence, based upon your success, and you feel more comfortable doing that. And then the last one here is fear of losing control. And this is a tough one for a lot of people, right? Like, I think when you're dealing with ambiguous situations, people like to control their environment as much as they can. And that control not only means, what decisions are made, but also controlling the people that are working around them and with them. So don't let, fear of the messy unknown, turn you into a control freak. I think as an entrepreneur, you want to be open, you want to be fluid. You don't necessarily want to be rigid. So fear, is prevalent in uncertain environments. And I'll throw a little kudos to Big Babs here. And I'm just going to read this because Big Babs was talking about sort of our brains and how they're wired in our last presentation. But I'm just going to read a quick thing here. It says, our brains give us fits when facing uncertainty because they're wired to react to it with fear. As the uncertainty of scenarios increase, subjects' brains shift control over to the limbic system, the place where emotions such as anxiety and fear are generated. So it's basically, there's a correlation between uncertainty. The higher degree of uncertainty, the more our brains shift towards fear. And I'll just close out this segment by saying, or this slide, fear, I personally view fear as a poison because fear paralyzes you. Fear prevents you from communicating effectively. Fear makes you think irrationally. And I try, my best in my personal life to seek areas where I'm fearful, try to understand those fears and then overcome those fears. So maybe your fears are one of these 4, maybe there are a couple of these 4, or maybe they're none of these 4 and they're something entirely different. But I'd encourage everyone here to sort of think about, what you're afraid of. And in the curriculum, I've listed, I think there's like 11 steps of how to deal with fear. Again, just don't have enough time to go through it here today, but feel free to take a look. I think some of these steps can be really helpful for a lot of people. All right, so again, I'll take another pause here. If anyone wants to chime in, have you experienced fear, or how do you deal with uncertain situations? I'd love to hear it.
Anyone from the current projects can relate to these points? They struck me as very relevant. Everything with the public speaking and fear of being judged.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in to say that you just, stole a bit of the stuff that I thought about sales lesson, because actually all of those are the points that stop people from doing sales,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so psychological, that it's just as you overcome each of these, you are able to sell your product better.
Yeah, that's 100% right.
Is there so kind of on the opposite side, is there some balance between like a healthy amount of fear to ensure you're not becoming irrational, there's like sometimes it's good to be scared of the side of the cliff so that you don't just jump off without a parachute. but on other times, like you're like you don't want to be so scared that you're not able to like run next to the cliff. So there's I don't know. They're like, is there a balance here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there can be, and there probably should be. I think there's a balance in terms of like who you're working with as well. Like you probably all don't want to share the same fears, because then those fears propagate, and they become maybe larger than they need to be. So I think it's always healthy to have a discussion with your co-founders and your team, and like understanding where they fall on the spectrum. And I do think that maybe there is a healthy amount of fear, but I think a lot of it can be mitigated sort of by doing your research, having data, and making data-driven decisions. But again, this is all like a very individual journey. I think if you look at the steps that are in the curriculum, it's to summarize them, they kind of provide some guidance to the question that you're asking, which is like, even if you're afraid of something, you want to stay positive, embrace things that you can't control, like acknowledge the fear, I guess, is a good way to still keep fear, a healthy amount of fear, but be able to think more rationally, even in fearful situations.
This is going to sound a little, quote unquote, mystical, and I know how ridiculous it sounds, but I found that being grateful of your fear does a lot to dispel it. Like your fear is there to help you, to point you towards things that your logical mind may not necessarily be, being able to consciously grasp. So there's always a gem of truth. And I find that, engaging your fear as somebody that's trying to something, or somebody that's trying to help you, helps you listen to it and identify what the true issue is. And once you identified it, and also understood why it is that you're bothered, because sometimes what your fear is telling you is not necessarily the true issue, that's when I find it's easier to engage and drive forward.
I can't see because I'm sharing my screen. Who just shared that?
Educator.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, and I'm very much in a similar vein as you. But I think from a life perspective, again, this is just Iceman's point of view. But I think the biggest gains you'll make as a person, as an entrepreneur, are when you sort of understand and overcome your fears, right? I think those are the biggest gains. As the educator sort of mentioned, the biggest gains that you'll see in life. But it's a good area to explore, dive deeper. All right, cool. I'm not sure how I am on time, so I'll try to go through these a little bit more quickly. But empathy is, in my mind, it is everything. I think empathy is sort of like a lost art in today's world, in today's society. I think I view empathy as not only understanding another person's point of view, but really feeling where they're coming from and sort of being in their shoes, right? So you can have two opposing views, but if you can really understand where that other person is coming from and really feel, their passion or their pain or whatever it is, I think that only one could perhaps enhance, your argument. But from a business sense, empathy creates customer loyalty because you yourself almost become the customer, right? Like, Evelyn, I'll use you as an example. I hope you don't mind, sir. But, we were chatting and, you had some pain points that you described and you described them in such a way with such passion that like I felt them, right? Like I was empathetic in that situation. It also helped because I experienced those same problems. But I think when you can empathize with someone, you create this sort of like psychological loyalty. Many brands, try to do this, and they're very successful at this. But I think the art of empathy, from a business sense, can help you deeply understand your customer. It helps create a more productive work culture, because if you're understanding of your employees and maybe the challenges that they face, whether professionally or personally, that's a huge bump, right? People feel like you understand them, and when people feel understood, they tend to be more productive. They tend to contribute more of themselves, right? Because they feel like they're part of something that resonates with them. Empathy helps strengthen relationships with vendors. Everyone here is going to go out and try to sell, and you're going to need partners, etc. So understanding their pain points and sort of putting yourself again in their shoes. Empathy helps you build networks, and empathy will help make you a happy entrepreneur. So I'm a very strong believer in being empathetic, and taking time to understand people's motivations. I know it was a bit quick. Does anyone want to contribute anything here?
Yeah, I think that's relevant. It's also has other side effects, right? That understanding you kind of who you're working with or who you're selling to, because of being in their shoes, tends to connect way better and tends to keep you going, regardless of the fog of war, not knowing what the end result is going to be, but you just want to solve the damn thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, I will keep going. All right, so this one, maybe I'll start this slide with a question to the group here. And the question is, what does it mean to be a leader in Web3? Curious what you all think.
I'll take a stab at it. So in Web3 specifically, I think you've got to be able to get a group of people who are geographically dispersed, rallying around a certain mission, whatever that may be. I think it is, there's this term bias for action, which I know Amazon is, I think they've kind of coined it. I've seen Evelyn use it, and I sort of like it as well. And I think as a leader, it's kind of on you through not just your words, but your actions to motivate the group of folks that you're working with, to have a bias for action, right? Keep moving forward, make decisions, be decisive, adjust, iterate, improve, and go. I think, there's a level of, I think this has to come from a leader too in Web3. I'm trying to parse this through kind of Web3 in traditional sense, but there's certainly a lot of overlap. I think, having a kind of open and transparent and collaborative nature for the mission and project that you're working on is core to the ethos of Web3. Certainly what we are trying to do in Sporos, come many, come all kind of thing, where we're all in it together and there's nothing happening behind closed doors and all the rules of the game are, out there for everybody to see. I think to be an effective leader in Web3, if you are serious about Web3, then you need to kind of have that at the forefront of your mind as well, in the forefront of kind of your project too. So there's, an element of vision casting and getting people excited about what you're doing. There's an element of making sure that people feel motivated and excited to work on what you're working on. And then there's a level of kind of transparency around all of it that I think you need to have as well.
It's well said. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, Cash, Cello, Tsunami, how do you guys think about this?
One thing that has been super apparent for the time I've been in the Web3 space is how important, strong, very concise, also very very clear communication is. Like how important communication is. Especially when you're working with these async teams, people that we just have our voice, and writing, written skills, presentation skills, like all these kind of things that you can get away with, and maybe this is like you can get away with this, before the pandemic as well, but but working with it within an office or whatever. But this is extremely important. And one of the biggest challenges at Odyssey and Olympus even is literally just communication, right? How do you communicate effectively these giant groups?
I think, did it cut out just for me, or?
Yeah, like for me it's as well. Brayers, we lost you.
Same here.
You're on a roll, sir.
So, am I back?
You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so it's using communication to bring clarity to whatever everyone's mission is or whatever. I think that the interesting thing is in the Web3 space, anyone that's here probably by default has a healthy sense of like risk taking already. So you're not really combating that quite as much, but you do have a few different personality types. So because of people's background, right? Like you're either already kind of wealthy and you're in the crypto space because you don't want to go get a job, or maybe you couldn't get a job and now you're in the crypto space, or maybe you were from Web 2 and you're just passionate about Web 3, right? But whatever your background is, you kind of come into this pool where everyone's just thirsty for direction, and sometimes it's not clear on who you should be following either, right? So I really do believe good leaders are good followers, but sometimes it becomes unclear where I should be focusing on. Anyway, I don't want to take too much time on that, but yeah, I really do think that clarity and communication are probably one of the most important and challenging parts in working in this space.
Yeah, you guys hit on a bunch of really really great points. I personally think that it's actually tougher or more difficult to be a leader in Web3, where I think it was Lippman that was talking before you. You're managing or working with diverse teams, or teams that are dispersed globally, right? That are anonymous. So I think finding ways to effectively communicate to such a broad array of people, I think it's tougher. Where traditionally, at least in my corporate experience, I'm based here in New York City. You're dealing with New Yorkers, or there's some diversity there, but you all have, maybe similar cultural values or cultural things or whatever. So I think, finding that theme that resonates, I think it's a little bit more challenging. And then Cadiz, I agree with you that communication is so, it's so paramount. It's like, it's the thing, that leaders really need. And, all of us have probably seen what happened at Time Wonderland. And I think you could argue that, it was, one, in my point of view, is probably like a lack of leadership. But that leadership, there was a lack of communication, right? Like, who was managing the ship? And, if you know these things, you should get that information out. And how do you get that information out? And, but I think, we saw a meltdown that kind of revolved around leadership, at least in my point of view. So, all of us are kind of marching in this space, but that does not mean that, because Web3 is decentralized, et cetera, that leadership doesn't exist anymore. I think it's more important now than ever. And the other side of this, on more of a micro sort of scale, is like, you guys are all founders of a company, right? And you want your company to grow, and there's going to be people that are working for you, in your company. So you want to be able to effectively lead those people. So leadership is a skill that, we can talk about for a very, very long time. But as everyone mentioned here, it's extremely important. There's many different elements, and it's shifting in Web3. So something to be aware of. All right, so one of my favorite topics, I've experienced this many times, which is co-founder conflict. And, what I want to do here is, so Tsunami team, I'm curious, I'm calling you guys out, but I'm curious, have you guys experienced any co-founder conflict? If so, how do you resolve them? Do you have ways that you resolve them? Or is this something that, you guys are new and you really haven't thought about? Curious where you guys are.
Hey, Brandon. Well, I believe our answer for our CEO, we didn't have any co-founder, like Kirill founded on his own, so there is no actual conflict here.
Okay. If a conflict arises, how do you guys plan on dealing with it?
I think the bottom line of the non-protocol startup is like we really have respect for each other's thoughts, all of this stuff, etc., etc. We try to help out in any way possible. So, not everyone is perfect. We realize that, and we try to come up with mutually beneficial decisions. So to grow personally, both and professionally. So we like a small but very integrated team, and we try to make our best to succeed in this project. We work like it's our hobby, not just like part-time or full-time activity. That's the bottom line, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well said. Well said.
Anyway, as you said before, some people have lack of inclusion into the project. Like they're regarded as a part-time activity, and they're not very well motivated, and that's a stumbling stone, of course. We didn't have this problem.
Great. No, that was well said. Thanks for sharing. I think mutual respect is key, right? Empathy here is key. Cello team, same question to you guys.
I'm sorry, I wanted to add something we don't have the problem of corporate experience, right? Because you guys are well aware of that, and being a small team has its benefits. So we're helping each other. We don't have this superiority issue. Like CEO is completely transparent with me, so with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I guess it throws away any issues we can come up with. Anyways, there's a very interesting topic, and I think it's something to consider for later as we grow, mature, and become a more experienced, larger team. Anyway, some conflict may arise, so thinking ahead what may be and how to combat this situation is great.
Yeah, no, that's transparency, mutual respect. Like you hit on a bunch of really key points there. So thanks for sharing, Tsunami team. Let's see. So Cello team, same question. Have you guys experienced conflict? If so, what sort of mechanisms do you guys use to resolve conflict?
Cash with us?
Yeah, sorry, my mic was bugging. Yeah, I think so far everything has been running smoothly. I think an important part in sort of any company in mitigating conflict is to always sort of prioritize the company and do what's best for the company. I think if both or if all of the founders within a company are sort of mission aligned and they're focused on sort of the end goal, then it becomes much easier for everyone to sort of work towards that common goal, and it's like the way of rallying troops.
So sorry guys, I lost my internet.
No worries. Did you hear the question?
Yeah, so I heard a question I was trying to answer, but I lost the internet.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah. Okay, so no conflict so far, but I have to accept that we haven't thought of a process to go through if something like big happens. No. So far, I think we have full respect to each other, and we have. I mean, with the vision, we have the same vision about the company, so we have been working really great, no? But that doesn't mean that things could happen, no? So, I mean, it's a great thing to think about. No? Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, look, everyone here sort of is saying the right terms, the right buzzwords. It's great to hear that no one's faced any sort of conflict. I think for people that have been in the entrepreneurship game for a long time, conflict is sort of inevitable. It's going to happen. But I think verbalizing these things, to each other and saying, things like mutual respect and transparency, aligning visions. I think Kesh was talking about that. Even just saying those things out loud and hearing it for yourself and your teammates hearing it can go a long way in mitigating even future conflict, right? So I think those things are really important. Some of my startups we've drafted like rules of engagement sort of things, and it's just like maybe 5 bullet points on areas where we either remind each other, to Kesh's point, like, hey, look, we're all working towards the best of the company. Or to benefit the company. So that could be one rule. Rule number 2 could be something like if we're in a heated debate, we agree to step away and come back at some later point when our heads are cooler, maybe. Whatever it is that works for your company and your team, but conflict is going to happen, unfortunately. So. Just being aware of this, and maybe it's not your number one priority as we're all sort of building, but, I think at some point, getting this down and sort of, having some rules of engagement or whatever you want to call it can only help, strengthen your relationship with your co-founders and hopefully strengthen your product, in your business. So I wanted to spend some time talking about this. And then I think is this the last slide? There might be one more. Okay. Very last slide. Evelyn, I hope I'm not over time, and it's been hard to kind of figure out if I'm on track or off track.
No, you're good right now. We don't have the second topic, so you're good.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I think the other part of today's presentation was on market sizing. So I added a simple slide here. And I also added some homework in the curriculum section of Notion for this week. And the homework essentially goes through, each of the categories, that we spoke about, asking you, individually to do some like self-reflection on like leadership and, fear and what you think your superpowers are as an entrepreneur and that kind of stuff. But also, on doing some market sizing. So, as you all are, introducing your products to the world, market sizing it's going to be key, right? You want to see if you're tapping into a large, profitable market, understanding what that market is, and then also, as you guys are like fundraising and stuff, sort of communicating that market size to investors is going to be key. So I just dropped a slide here. I referenced some materials in the Notion curriculum section. There's a link there with like more detailed description, but I thought maybe we could spend a couple minutes on maybe best practices and how people typically, do market sizing exercises. One common one is what you're looking at here, which is TAM, SAM, SOM. So it's, understanding the total addressable market. So basically if everyone, within, it's like 100% of the market for your product, right? And then within that total addressable market, you have the serviceable available market, which is like, all right, so of this whole market of people, which do we think are most likely to use, our product? And like these are all sort of like pie in the sky scenarios. And then you whittle that down to the serviceable obtainable market, which is like, all right, so we looked at the huge, the whole market, segmented that market, and then of that segment, what do we think we can achieve realistically? I've had many discussions with VCs and investors, and I've heard, a number of different things, whether they prefer like a top-down approach, which is sort of this, or if they prefer a bottom-up approach, which is, starting from, maybe some marketing metrics that you have and, growth of the company and having like a very detailed plan, starting small and growing big. But, curious, if the group here has questions or if there are other like best practices that you guys have seen. Competitive analysis could also be like a good market barometer. Hey, look, we think we're similar to this other company, and they've achieved, this percent of market share. We think we can do the same. I think there's many different ways, but, part of, I think the homework and the thinking this week is to outline your market size, and just wanted to spend some time here to get people's thoughts.
Okay, just to clarify that you're now crossing into the second topic for today, which was market analysis. So we had two topics scheduled for today, just to clarify people that have not noticed that on the schedule. Entrepreneurial mindset, which we just wrapped up, and if there are any questions, we can address them now. And then the second topic is on market analysis, and I appreciate you covering both actually today. We had a second speaker who's not showing up, so this is awesome. So on the mindset topic, does anybody want to cover anything from their project's challenges right now that are relatable? Okay, let's keep going then.
Cool. So actually, maybe I'll call someone out here. Big Babs, can I put you on the spot? Are you there, sir?
Yeah, I'm here. Where do you want to put me?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on market sizing? How would you typically approach a market sizing exercise?
Well, it actually, what I learned throughout all the exercises that I did, that it really it's down to the product that you are creating, and trying to find like the most lookalike product to yours, and run it from there usually gave the best results. although like with everything, like every plan that you will make during this journey, I'm 95% sure that whatever you put as a plan, it will not play out like that. That's just again from my experience. So this is more like exercise that you that you actually overcome those fears that Brandon was mentioning before, and collect all the data that will make you confident about what you're about to do. If that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Yep. So perhaps Evelyn Lipman, like when thinking about market sizing for sweat token.
Yep.
There was a lot of talk about Carta, and maybe you can use them, to Big Bab's point, as sort of a benchmark to what could be possible.
Yeah, the drill that we had, the office hour with you, Brothers, was super helpful to me. I mean, back to the whole thing, it's a peer support group, and being a little bit of a little humble when it comes to doing something new. You can argue that I've done this a few times, but it was so enlightening when you put us in a corner and a push to say, what is it that you can solve right now, today? The big vision is great, but if you're like 6 months or a year off targets on the market timing, doesn't matter. The team is not going to exist in 6 months. So what can you solve right now? So keep narrowing the niche. That was really good. Like narrow the niche to a subset of people that relate to what you can do for them today. And that's how we came up with this. All that we do is public, right? Well, in the public channel. So those 10, 11 points of who we want to focus on, like brand new projects, Web3 native, want to go open source, want to be completely decentralized, don't have an entity, legal entity that creates more complications, don't have a DAO on chain yet, which creates more complications to figure out. So narrow. It's been super helpful. And Lippmann shared today the Carta story, their early days. In the late days, now that they're like multi-billion company, the funny thing is you talk to an attorney, they immediately forward how they created the Carta for the company to manage it. But from what I've seen in the early days, attorneys did not like giving up professional services time for tinkering with documents and spreadsheets, handing that over to a tool that takes all that revenue away. So, Carta went around, and this blog post was really good. They ended up thinking, okay, we need to sell it to a few VCs and then go from there. Completely unnatural, but that's the early days. I guess that'll be the sum, right? Gotta start with the sum and then expand to the other circles.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would tack on to this one, Brandon, your concentric circle here, is you have like the current addressable market, and then you also have that second derivative, right, which is the growth or reduction in the market and where you think it's going to be going over the next X amount of time, 3, 5, 10, whatever it may be. Because I'll tell a personal story here, right? Like, all of us here in Web3, we think the addressable market is going, or it's all of these circles actually, for any of our businesses are going to continue to grow over the next decade plus. At the same time, though, I come from, in my previous life, an industry where, part of my previous life was spent in an industry where I would say that even though the addressable market is sizable, it's decreasing. And I don't see a path for that particular market where it's going to increase at any time soon, right? So I think having that perspective is healthy as well. because it gives you a sense of, just kind of what the overall opportunity is. And I think because we're all in Web3, like the opportunity is going to be robust unless, unless, I don't know, there's some like black swan event somewhere, which I guess is possible. But that's when I think about different ventures, different opportunities, different industries, different niches within the industry. I also like to think about not what the snapshot is today, but where it's going in the future.
Great point. Really great point. Yeah, growth of the market is huge, right? Because then that gives you more confidence and validation that like you're putting your time, investment, and product, in a in the right place, right? Because if you're putting it, like you said, in a market that's decreasing, it sort of defeats the point almost.
Yeah, and then you can actually think about. I'm going to go to Briareus's point or his question about like which would like kind of be like the third derivative, right? Which is like the accelerants of growth within the sub industry. So even if you have a whole industry like Web3, which we think is going to grow, there are pockets within the industry that will grow faster than others. And so, staying with him, he's looking at building out a wallet. And I've been that annoying guy that as I see things or read things, I'll just shoot him a DM. But like one of the things that I've sent him is just around like Africa and adoption of crypto like within Africa, right? And the need to create technologies and solutions that are just extremely simple, but then also the rate of adoption of crypto within different parts of Africa. So if you were to be now saying Africa or a country in Africa is not niche, but if you were to try to focus your serviceable, obtainable market to a niche with anywhere in the world, there are data points that you could point to say like maybe areas within Africa make the most sense because yes, Web3 is going to grow, but even more so, I can be hyper focused on those locations and get more growth out of it there.
Love it. Yeah. I was thinking, I'm sort of spitballing here, but maybe if it's helpful, maybe we can go sort of team by team and just, I think at a high level, talk about, who do you think your target market is and what niche within that market are you considering? And, Hash, I think we've exchanged some messages and like, I know, you guys are working towards, setting up Discord notifications for different, so that people can like aggregate information. And I guess the question, for you all would be, is every person that uses Discord part of your target market? Is it a specific type of user? Just curious, and also, I'm asking these questions to get, obviously, each team here thinking about this. So, Hash, if it's okay, maybe we start with you guys.
Yeah, sure. No, I don't think that Hash in its current iteration has built a persona of every Discord user. Sort of what we've been building with in mind is sort of, like people such as ourselves really who spend and work on Discord. A common sort of group of people that we're aiming to get is like a community moderator, right? So every Discord server has several community moderators, and they all spend hours a day on Discord, 5 days a week, and they receive a lot of notifications. So that's sort of like the small niche that we are targeting.
That makes sense. So you have a specific sort of persona in mind, which is very helpful, right? And you sort of build on top of that.
Right.
Okay. Cool. Any feedback from the group? Anyone want to share any thoughts with Hash?
Brandon, can you share some insight on DeFi market? Because narrowed it down to like social media accounts, but I think we're gonna aim larger and discuss DeFi at a global scale. So can we make some insights here?
Yeah. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. We aim to establish a valid and accessible point of entry to the average Joe, let's say, yeah? Because right now, DeFi is dominated by crypto whales, right? Well, crypto is not that accessible as many companies advertise. And we know that in 5-10 years, we're going to reach this point of adoption. Well, it's going to be mainstream, just like credit cards, Apple Pay, all that stuff. At the same time, DeFi is another layer of complexity, interfaces, communication, accessibility, technical intricacy, and all this financial amplitude is just so way too hard for average user, right? So at the same time, the market is big, it's very big, and it's growing. Like last year, there's been a lot of estimates. Like everyone expected that DeFi would come into something like DeFi Summer 2.0. Well, it didn't happen, and we obviously stuck in some kind of DeFi winter, but it still is aimed to charge for growth, right? And we, as a startup, as a DeFi startup, see it as a very infancy stage. Like we know that millions, tens of millions of users will come and use, if not our product, but the products of DeFi yield, stablecoin aggregation. It's inevitable because it's the future, as we see, the future of banking services, an emerging alternative finance world. So potentially, if we're gonna talk in plain English, let's say we address market of hundreds of millions of people. Some people even don't know it yet, but they will possibly become, if not our customers, but the customers of our competitors. Anyways, they're gonna use DeFi services within 5 years or so. And the feature of our audience is that it's global. Like if you are in stablecoin business alone, you are limited. You are limited to the stablecoins. If it's like fiat-backed stablecoin, then you're obviously narrowed down by the audience of either Europe or local currency. It's not a dollar. So there are obvious limitations. Just an example. If you're in the DeFi business, you're not limited because the only limit is possibly that technology, but not the market, not the borders. So we love DeFi, and we see huge potential there because we can address any market, any audience. Like, we're gonna hire more community managers if needed to communicate well with our audience. But we try to attract as many people as we can to this and explain the concept of DeFi yield aggregation, put some educational content there. So we pitched articles to Cointelegraph, other media. We maintain our blog on Medium, and we hope that this financial education will help to climb the learning curve in crypto and DeFi for average crypto user. Thanks, Brandon. Sums up what we want to say.
Yeah. That's, I mean, like it's, DeFi, Web3, like the addressable markets are certainly huge. I think, from my perspective, when you start, marketing, these products, the more niche, you can get and have sort of certain personas, because like a Twitter message, let's imagine, may only resonate, with some demographic. It's hard to, from a marketing perspective, like it's hard to market to everyone, right? Because there's so many different segments, there's so many different types of messaging. I mean, things like colors and fonts and, all that stuff can matter to different demographics. So I think, while it's a huge market, sort of trying to segment it, at least initially, and understanding like, a couple core personas of people that you think could be the most interested in your product when you launch it, right? So maybe you have, 3 different types of people or age ranges or whatever, and you start there and then expand upon it. In my personal, again, this is my personal experience, I think starting large and thinking everyone is your customer is a harder play, especially when you start, again, like marketing and even as you build your product, I think you want to have a specific sort of user in mind. But I'm curious to hear what others think about this as well.
Yeah, I want to add. I think we have two groups of people what will be interesting in our product. The first one, it's early adopters and it's already DeFi users, and the second one, a big market. About Alexander what said.
Mm-hmm.
We target on the little market for early adopters, for people who already use stablecoins.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, on top of that, you perfectly outlined the problem, like it's different branding, different messaging, all that stuff. But yeah, let's narrow it down and say, hey, still it's the new generation that adores crypto and NFTs become natural to them, right? Like this Nike NFT things they unveiled recently, the sneakers, like really look into the future right now. Well, we would narrow down to the young population, of course, but it also depends. Like, for example, in UK, there is an evident shift from the young population to mature one, but still, mostly young population adores crypto. In emerging markets like Africa or India or Singapore, everyone's trying to get access to alternative bank accounts because of obvious limitations in TradFi. Like it's utterly hard to get a bank account there. So people who just own a mobile phone have a basic point of entry into Web3. Next, it's of course Twitter engagement, social engagement. It's hard to come up with that, but I think that in crypto, DeFi alone, all this stuff is still narrowed down. Like, yeah, we have thousands of protocols out there, like 400 on Ethereum alone, if I'm right. But still, the niche is narrow. There's not like 1 million people working on it here right now. So most people know each other, or projects team, or opinion leaders, influencers. So our main stumbling stone or challenge is how to properly get the audience listen to us and get the message. Like a lot of projects try to come up with a simple basic idea that you get the best yield right here, right now, the first, the best, stuff like this. And it's not original. We try to come up with not original but effective approach, but advertise our feature. Like we don't have a killer feature, but we have a lot of features. Like we narrowed it down to 5 or 7, depending on the pitch. So that basically streamlines your user experience in DeFi. Like it won't bring you to the moon, or like you won't get insanely rich with us, but you will have better returns than your usual bank, something like that. Well, it's our take on the problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's clear that, the Hash team, Tsunami team, and, hopefully we have enough time to get to the others. Like, you guys have started thinking about this, right? And you understand, a bit about your segments. I think, what would be interesting next is, for at least both of your teams to start to quantify, this and put some numbers here and see, what that looks like. On the other side too, it's once you have the numbers, you're going to have to, again, we spoke about this, during the mindset session, but like effectively communicate, who's the target market, why do you think it's so big, the growth of it, but being able to do that, in a quick, 60-second pitch, let's say, it's only going to help you guys get stronger, and sort of reinforce your beliefs and your approach, towards your product. So you guys really, it sounds like you've done a lot of great work. I think now, we just take it to the next level and quantify and communicate.
Yeah, Brandon, if I may add something here to this topic. So Tsunami team, I would highly recommend you grab office hours with, Brayres, Brandon, Big Babs, Felix, anybody pretty much on this call who has a ton of experience seeing DeFi go up and down the last year and a half, because we're in an interesting situation where it's also an opportunity, right? A bunch of DeFi has blown up. A bunch of incentive designs have proven, have not been able to prove to withstand the market changes. So the opportunity is like, who of the remaining bodies in the Web3 world who still believe and still sticking around can you convince to come on board right away? Like when you pitched me in our first call, what I really liked is that your algorithms are going to do the thinking for somebody DeFi dumb as I am. Like I don't do pretty much any of the farming because it's a ton of time to figure it out. And by the time I get in it, they already, the incentives are almost done. So a bunch of things like that. I assume there is more dummy like me that would be happy to hand over management to something of farming to a cool algorithm that is verifiable, that is not going to get rugged, all these things. But yeah, definitely recommend chatting office hours with these folks that are much smarter than I am to figure out what is relevant to people right now that you can sell to right now, and then expand from there.
Yep. Thank you for advice.
Well, anyway, is that a question, or can we discuss this topic?
No, I was just recommending. We have a little bit of time left. We have 20 more minutes for Q&A. I was just recommending you to grab more time with officers, with these guys to narrow down your immediately address, like the sum, like who can you sell right now, and then who can you sell to a few months from now, taking in account all the market conditions at the moment. Because when you started a few months ago, market conditions were super different, right? Everybody was all hyped up about DeFi. A few months later, market changed. You got to adapt.
I have a question about this, like TAM in general. I've always kind of wondered this. Short of going to some consulting firm that does this professionally, I mean, how do you find this out? How do you actually get like data that's real versus like I think it's real because this article, because I know that there are consulting firms that just do this, and if you have enough money, you can go basically buy this information. But like, if you're bootstrapping and you don't have the funds, are there any strategies that anyone has on actually gathering this data?
I thought you gave us the answer last week on our office hour call. Like, just go to the street, talk to people that are real people.
Okay, that makes more sense.
I think it's it's a combination of that. Also, typically you can find research that's already been done. So for Artemis, I use as an example, Electric Capital had put together a fantastic DeFi and Web3 presentation. And I'll see if I can dig up the link. You guys may have seen it. But they went really deep, right? Like they did a lot of the customer conversations. There's incredible growth rates across many different segments of DeFi and Web3. We found some that were helpful, within the education sector. And we actually used some of those in our investor pitches. So I think, doing the work yourself is great. I also recommend like concurrently or like while you're doing that, also kind of just doing some research and seeing if other firms have put out, thought leadership articles or point of views or white papers or whatever. Because especially as it pertains to like DeFi and Web3, there's a lot of content already out there, and you just kind of got to see if it fits, what you're building.
sometimes you have to try to like triangulate to it too. It's never spelled out in black and white, especially with some of these more obscure industries or sub-industries. So, to Brandon's point, Web3, for example, you've got some big players like A16Z who put out a bunch of research, a bunch of information. A lot of it's self-serving, at least indirectly. But there's like nuggets that you might be able to find, right? So whether it's industry size or, kind of companies that have been funded or whatever it may be, and then you may be able to find in more traditional sources like a pitch book, more like additional information about, say a particular industry or sub-industry related to blockchain or Web3. And so now you've got, two pieces of data that may or may not line up, but at least you have perspective from a couple different sources. And so then you see if you can find a few more like that. And then from there, maybe it's not saying like, hey, this particular industry is going to, has this exact many companies or this exact growth rate target, but, a range of this and that. So you can at least speak to it with a little bit of credibility and have a few data sources to back it up.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the key point in all of this, right? Because there's this nice quote from Eisenhower that says that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And I think it really applies here as well, right? I mean, it's not about getting 100% accurate data or getting the exact map of the competitive landscape, but it's just thinking it through and targeting a little bit at where you want to start, right? I mean, it's not going to be, you're not working on a research report, right? It's just really to focus a little bit more what you're working on today.
That's right.
I like that, Felix, a lot, what you said. And actually, it aligns nicely with everything that everyone else said, because, it's just a matter to get your mind into to get focus around the things and around your addressable market, and think about it and think how your product fits in there. You will, let's say, from my own experience, I used to purchase data for a pretty big industry that's with like hundreds of millions of users, etc., etc. And I can tell you that the three largest data providers all had different data, and that the range was 25%. So, for established old industry where everything is in the books. So this is like an exercise for yourself to find how you fit, to triangulate, as Lipman said, from the available data. But in the same time, it will not come to you on the silver platter. You have to do the work and go out and search for it. And just be smart, find similar products, find investors who invested in similar products, and start from there. Like, good thing about Web3 is that it's open source. There's a lot of documentation, white papers, etc. that offer this information. And my again from experience advice, if you have like 2 or 3 data points, use the lowest one, not the biggest one.
Want to be conservative. Yeah, that's right. Cool. Yeah. I mean, look, as Big Babs mentioned, and as we spoke about, during today's presentation, these conversations are meant to get you all thinking, right? Hopefully thinking more deeply about, what it is to be an entrepreneur, how you manage teams, where you experience fear, all in the effort or the goal of, strengthening yourself and your team and your product. So I think with that, Evelyn, I think we're at time, right?
yeah, getting there. And I keep unmuting myself because I want to pitch in. I feel excited about this topic, but let's do it offline. There is so much more to say and share from experience. Really good discussion, good content. So maybe if you can restate the homework, so everybody can go get their checkbox and their Sporos tokens.
Yeah, so I can paste it in Discord. It's in the in today's session at the bottom of the Notion curriculum page. But the homework really touches on each section of the entrepreneurial mindset discussion, as well as the market sizing. So your thoughts on best ways to drive team accountability. How to become that super entrepreneur again by those 5 points that we spoke about. Sharing your thoughts on those, but then also sharing those with your co-founders and seeing if there's overlap or divergence. And similarly, doing that with fear. Spending some time thinking about empathy, what it means to be a leader in Web3, and having a plan for how to resolve co-founder conflict. Right. So. And then the final one is actually, doing this market sizing, triangulating that data, but then, putting some pen to paper and quantifying, where you think you are, maybe quantifying some growth rates. And then also, thinking about how you're going to pitch your market size. Because I think being able to clearly state who's your target customer, why, you believe your market size to be, what you think it is, being able to clearly communicate that is going to be key, right? And investors care very much about market size and your understanding of that market. So that's a homework. I'll drop it in Discord too if it's easier. So yeah, thanks everyone.
That's awesome. Appreciate it. And just a reminder of the mechanics we're experimenting with to keep all incentives aligned and the level the playing field. So for projects participating in these classes, we ask for a couple hundred tokens from your sweat equity vault. This is all in the Sporos docs and the fee schedule. But as you get a check mark from 3 mentors that you've actually did the homework for each class, you get the corresponding amount back from the SporosDAO's vault. And then, of course, we reward presenters here, and for office hours, we also expect them for you to reward them from your sweat equity. So, and these are the current kind of incentives that we're working with. Always open to suggestions how we can make this better, so it's a win-win for everyone. Thanks everybody for attending. Any last questions before we wrap up?
Brandon, thanks for putting this together. It was a great session.
I loved it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, on behalf of the team, I want to thank you guys. An exciting talk, very insightful session, nice topic. So thanks again. Looking forward to make our homework and to the next session.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon, everyone.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Nice day,
Peace out, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.